Hey, welcome back to the Rest of Rig Shed. This video is going to be a closer look at undoing this nut here, which holds on the front sprocket on a Tomos A3, A35 and some of the newer engines. Once you've removed the side casing and all the kickstart assembly, you need to fold flat the tab on the locking washer using a hammer and a drift. You know what a hammer looks like? That's kind of a drift there. You can also use a screwdriver with a top to it like that, which doesn't mind being hit with a hammer. Don't hit this type of screwdriver with a hammer because you may hurt yourself. So once you've got that tab folded flat, you then need to undo the nut, which is 30mm, so you need a 30mm spanner or a 30mm socket. There's two problems here. If your bike's in the frame, you need to be able to turn that nut with the spanner and not hit anything on the frame. Sometimes you find that it hits the shock mount or the side cover brackets, that kind of thing. And it's also incredibly tight. So you have to lock this sprocket up either by holding the back wheel on with a brake or getting somebody to hold it with a set of kind of adjustable grips like this in there. But again, that can get in the way of you turning it with a spanner. So what I started to do is I use a socket. Now most long reach 30mm sockets like this aren't long enough. See, it doesn't get close enough to go over the nut. So what I did was I got a short reach socket, standard sort of size. I drilled the inside out just enough so it would go over the kickstart shaft. And then I got a 10mm spark plug socket, which has this pretty much a nice internal diameter to slide over the kickstart shaft as well. And then I cleaned up that area there on the first sprocket and that area there on that sprocket with a grinder to get rid of any chrome plating, because you don't really want to weld anything that's chrome plated. It's not very good for your health. I then tacked it in place in 3 points to make sure everything stayed kind of concentric to each other. Then I kind of took it away, put it on the workbench and welded it all up with a lot of power. You don't want to just be leaving this tack welded because there's a lot of kind of force being applied through these two parts. So once that was on, I could then either use a very long breaker bar, which is much longer than a spanner, or an electric impact gun. So, and then like that, make sure it's going the right direction, make sure it's over the nut nicely, and off it comes. See, it's not a very big nut, but it's got a very fine thread on it. So it's important that whatever you use to take it off fits on that nicely. Otherwise it could slip off and you could hurt yourself. Here's a little closer look at that locking washer. When you put that on, you've got to make sure that this little tab here goes inside that little hole in the sprocket there. So when you go to reassemble it all, you're most likely going to need to do this if you need to change this oil seal here. Looking at this one, we're going to need to change it at some point. So make sure that the splines on the drive shaft line up with the splines on the sprocket. If you try and tighten it up and they're not aligned, you will make a mess of the sprocket. Because the sprocket isn't made of, the material isn't made as hard as the actual drive shaft itself. And then put the nut back on. Hand tight it first, just to make sure everything is, you're not cross threading it. Make sure the impact gun's going in the other direction. And just get a little, there you go, lined up. There you go. Once it's back on and it's tight, fold the tab washer over again onto one of the flats of the nut as a kind of extra safety to stop it from coming undone. Got to remember that this is turning in the same direction as the nut wants to undo, so hence it needs to be tight, and you need the locking washer on there to stop it from undoing itself. Once it's all back together, put the side case on, kickstart assembly, and away you go. It's all done with 2 sockets welded together. If you found that useful, thanks for watching, please subscribe, and I'll see you again.